The download.
Hello everyone, and bonjour from La Croisette in Cannes. Welcome to a special episode of The Download, presented by Microsoft Advertising. This time, coming to you at long last from Cannes Lions. I'm Jennifer Solomon-Baum. It's been 3 years since the International Festival of Creativity has taken place in person, and we're thrilled to be back here to reconnect with the brightest minds in the advertising industry. Coming up, we have a great show for you on the way. In our Inclusive Marketing Lab segment, we look at bias in data and AI, the importance of diversity and representation in data collection, and initiatives to drive representation in companies at all levels. In a French twist of our big interview segment, we present to you Les Petites Interviews, a series of short discussions with industry experts on two key topics we've been hearing a lot here in Cannes: the future of retail and the future of work, including different ways to structure agencies and hire talent. But first, we at Microsoft Advertising are delighted to officially announce the acquisition of Xandr, a data-enabled technology platform for premium advertising. And to help celebrate this, let's hear from our Corporate Vice President, Rob Wilk, and Xandr Executive Vice President, Mike Welch.
So Mike, we're here at Cannes 2022. It's been a couple of years.
Back on the beach.
Love it. Give me one or two words to describe how you feel right now.
It is great being back because we've been in virtual world for the last couple of years, and to see everyone and be back on the beach, be back in the Croisette. It feels like we're home. So Rob, we've been partners, Xandr and Microsoft, for a long time. In fact, dating back to the AppNexus days pre-Xandr. Why now? Why the acquisition today in 2022?
One of the biggest things is that Microsoft is now fully committed to online advertising, and we've done an incredible job of our relationships with advertisers, with agencies, with monetizing our O&O properties. But what the piece that we were missing was a global platform that can help us on both the buy side, but really also on the third-party publishing side, which is such a strength of Xandr.
How do you think the two organizations coming together will really help marketers achieve their objectives?
Yeah, it's really important to understand that not only is Xandr a global platform, but Microsoft Advertising launched 100 new countries this year alone. We just came back a few weeks ago from our big launch in Japan. So you have the global alignment for marketers, which is critical. Then you also have the horizontal alignments that the combined Microsoft Advertising and Xandr really bring together. Examples would be Promote IQ. Marketers want to reach people when they're shopping, but also they want to reach those people when they're across the open web. We have a product called the Microsoft Audience Network, which is our big, fastest growing native product. Xandr is going to help us reach these folks across their vast amount of supply globally, no matter where those users are. So there's tons of areas like that make so much sense.
There is so much energy and electricity in the air this year at Cannes Lions. And with all these creative and strategic minds in one place, our big interview became a series of little ones, focusing on two key themes: the future of retail and the future of work. So we present to you now Les Petites Interviews. So Glenn, let's talk about the future of retail. What are the big trends that you're seeing?
I think we've seen a shift of brands realizing that actually this is a change for good. We're not going to go back to how it was. And organizations need to change because of that, actually, because we're still structured in an old siloed way. There's teams that do predominantly offline stuff, and there's teams that do predominantly online stuff. Walk into a physical store though, and half the people will be on mobile phones. And of those half of those people are looking at something relating to that shop there. So we're in a world of hybrid shopping. Brands are going to need to change their org structure to adapt to this new era of the hybrid shopper. Well, if you think about it, even before there was the internet where we could do wonderful things, we would recommend to clients a test and learn strategy. Well, just do the same. That strategy was great then, it's great now. Have a small budget for trying things out. And depending on what you do as a brand, the metaverse could be a
Yeah.
worth trying.
What was really an interesting amplification was when you think about the activations we would have done in physical spaces, it was quite seamless for us to move those to virtual spaces. And some examples of that would be we built our first video game called Pakistan the Game.
Yep.
And then we launched virtual clothing on Roblox. And as we saw the consumer and the audience, really it resonated so much with them. And we do see this as a two-prong approach as you look at the commerce and community aspects of what we are building as a lifestyle brand.
Consumer behaviors have changed dramatically for the last couple of years. What are the big trends that you're seeing that are really important for your role right now as a CMO at GSK?
We're focused on three key areas. The first being inclusion. How can we make sure that the products that we're delivering, the services and the technology partners that we're doing are helping to make everyday healthcare more inclusive and including more consumers along the way. The second is achievable. How can we make delivering that health more easier for people to achieve with, again, our products and services. And then finally, sustainable. Sustainability is an important part of where we will focus because we understand even more so now the health of people and the health of the planet are really, strongly linked.
In a world where we're inundated by data, how do you advise brands on what is the data they should pay attention to? How do we not think about this in silo, and how do we add the human element or that notion of empathy and creativity mix into the data?
I think over the last maybe 10 years as an industry, we've become fixated on the things we can do, and we've forgotten about what we're actually trying to do. There's some interesting stats around third-party data that suggests in some cases you are less likely to get gender right using third-party data than if you just took a stab in the dark. What's your experience of the advertising, the media experience that you get when you're online? Is it a good media experience? I would argue a lot of the time it's not. And that's because someone has said, okay, we can set these parameters, but they haven't thought about the experience you're giving to people. What we're seeing over the last 3 or 4 years, not just driven by metaverse and NFTs and stuff, but also just by the new luxury consumers coming up, is a desire for these brands to now let go a little bit. So we're seeing insane crossovers and collaborations between, super luxury brands and artists, or even luxury brands who are competitors competing with each other and making each other's products as a new line for both of them. And these are like mind-blowing. If you go 10 years ago, that would have never happened.
How are you advising your brands to think about data with empathy in a smart way?
Data is real people in disguise, and it doesn't matter how many points of data that you have about someone, you don't understand really their motivations, and that context is critical. And that bit still is where creativity and the alchemy of the data and the creativity is key. So yes, we have to bring that empathy to that data. It's not about to start replacing our creatives, but it's something that we're harnessing better and better.
So let's talk about the future of work. And one of the things that we've done at Microsoft, for instance, is removing college education from the job description. It's college education or equivalent.
Yes. So, when you talk about, diversity, it's like social diversity, it's neural diversity. There are so many different types. But what we're really saying is we want different perspectives. There's a challenge in the industry in general where when you're at school, you can't know that this is an industry that you want to work in because you don't even know these jobs exist. We're trying to look in places where you don't often look for the same types of people because it improves our product. People from different with different perspectives, make a stronger creative product. So just from a purely business commercial perspective, there's a really good reason for us to be investing in that. We don't want to kind of replicate existing industry structures. And so we don't, get everything right straight away, but we've just got a kind of curious, innovative mindset where we want to experiment. We call the Jellyfish structure a community structure. It's based on organising groups of people around a particular clear initiative and objective with clear roles and responsibilities on a number of different levels. So when you join Jellyfish, there is a community built around you as an individual, and that is a community that thinks about you your personal development, so includes your mentor, the kind of capability experts that you want to learn from.
So how would you advise companies to really be intentional in hiring diverse talent across all the levels within their companies, within their ranks?
What that means is that companies need to be intentional when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion at the highest levels. We like to call it DEI squared: diversity, equity, inclusion, intentionality. So there's two I's, not just one. We tend to focus mostly on the internal upward mobility because we know that if you strengthen the pipeline, then there's a greater chance that not only can you develop a leader that'll succeed, but also you're setting an example for the others that are rising up, because when you see it, you can be it. And that's a very positive retention strategy as well, because we know that retention is one of the big challenges, because you may have a great diversity hiring strategy, but if you don't have a strategy for belonging, they're going to leave. So you have to have that whole strategy for diversity, equity, inclusion, and intentionality.
Let's talk about hiring.
Yes.
I mean, we have gone through the great resignation, the great reshuffle, however we want to talk about it.
Yeah. From a recruiting standpoint, we lead with just who we are, and we're authentically ourselves. And it either is something that you are aligned with and get excited about, or something that isn't for you, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But it is truly something that we feel like is the only and the best way to bring on the best talent for Tenuity and for our clients.
Yeah. Love it. So how do we call people who work at Tenuity?
Tenution.
Tenution.
It took me about a year to get that right, but it's Tenutions.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. We call our employees Microsoft Tees. So
There you go. There you go.
Data is very biased. And AI, for instance, build on this biased data, develop products that are also biased. So how do we overcome that?
When it comes to AI, there is a bias when it comes to the voice, when it comes to facial data, facial recognition, everything like that. When it comes to voice assistants, the differential performance and algorithmic bias is so severe that when we talk about people of color, voice assistants don't respond in the same way to them. And I think that, if we're building a future that involves technology, and if we say that data is driving that future, then we need to make sure that the data sets that power that technology are going to be diverse. Otherwise, we're effectively saying that future is only for a very specific type of person.
Ty, it's so good to be in person with you.
I know, it's wonderful.
All right, so we just heard a fantastic panel and you presented the research Equity Every Day. Tell us a little bit about it.
Equity Every Day is a body of work exploring a concept called the knowledge action gap. 80% of people in this study that said diversity, equity, inclusion was important, but then only 38% of those people took an action to actually promote a highly qualified Black job candidate.
It's time to move from thought leadership to action leadership.
That means we have to address the real human biases that people are walking around with. Things like cognitive dissonance, where people feel their very identity is threatened. Persuasion knowledge, where people feel like they're being sold diversity. And then also a bias that we're all very familiar with, zero sum. And that's where you feel like a gain for one group is a loss for another group. So if we're going to mitigate these biases, what we've found is we have to move away from the transactional business case, which actually exacerbates these biases, to telling a more transformational case. And this is where marketers step in. Because what we found in the research, statistically significant predictive power is that when you tell a transformational story, when you index on emotion, then you can actually mitigate the biases that people feel and have them step beyond that.
What are 2-3 key insights that you uncovered from the research that marketers could really benefit from?
Absolutely. So the first one was diverse advertising unites us. The other insights are that actually tell one person's story really well rather than trying to tell too many stories. Lots of brands think I need to do diversity in my advertising, and they actually just do casting. So lots of vignettes, where it's better to kind of tell one person's story really, really well and really deeply. Another really important insight from the research is actually The US is a bit more brave in terms of its advertising than the UK. And then I guess the final one that's really important is what we call sadvertising. Avoid the sadvertising trap.
Yeah.
So where you've got an insight about a group you want to represent, give them agency. So Malteser's New Boyfriend's a great example of this. You know, the girl sits in her wheelchair, she's owning the gag, she's got the agency, no one's making the gag on her.
So we just heard a fantastic panel on diversity, equity, representation. But when you think about the role of marketers and brands, how do you advise them to step into that space?
Our view is that marketers are actually the group of executives that have the greatest potential to make material change in society. Why? Because they have the leverage of the investment they make in media. And if we, as well as all the other things you need to do about having a diverse team, doing everything you can to build belonging in your organization, all of those things are good, but the thing that marketers have that nobody else has is the leverage of their investment. And if that is used to show a representative world to a representative world with good storytelling, then society will improve.
Yeah, and I think the how is what's missing, right? We know why is important, but the how is important. And I think what we've done at BBDO as an example is to try to achieve some of those outcomes that we saw from the Feeling Seen report by creating a process that we call the Creative Compass process. And what it does at its core is it codifies inclusive best practices as we're developing work in real time. So now we're having a conversation around inclusion as part of the business problem set that we're trying to solve for our clients, as opposed to something that we're trying to solve for at the casting or even production stage.
Yeah. MJ.
Yes.
It is so good to be in person, not only in person actually, because we've been doing this for a while remotely.
Yes, I know. It's remarkable and long overdue.
Yes, absolutely. So you have been running our inclusive marketing labs for the download for a while.
Yes.
Now this is the inclusive marketing beach, perhaps? Would you call it like that?
I would definitely call it that.
Yes, all right. So it seems that one of the themes that we have heard as well is that all marketing should be inclusive. It's not a line item that we have to think about later on, right? So can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, any business leader likes to reach more customers.
Yep.
And so the idea of inclusive marketing is really based on finding how we might be accidentally excluding people from the conversations and connections that brands are trying to make with audiences. And so it's a really important part of the core strategy of a brand to understand how they might be, accidentally being biased in their data and analytics and not uncovering how to design for people that may not be their classic core audience. And maybe their core audience is really much larger than it really has been, but they're designing in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to start looking at this as a growth strategy.
MJ, such a delight to be here with you. Thank you.
So good to see you.
To quote my colleague MJ, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to say inclusive marketing. It would just be good marketing. Business leaders want to reach more customers, but when the data only reflects a portion of the population, we're leaving a lot of people behind. Okay, that's a wrap for a special episode here in Cannes. What an inspiring week this has been. Thank you to all our guests, our clients, our partners for the time and insights. Special thanks to our new family member Xandr, our cousins at LinkedIn, and thanks to you all for watching. We'll take a short break for the summer, but the download will be back for season 3 in September. Until then, for everyone here at Microsoft Advertising, I'm Jennifer Solomon-Baum, wishing you all a fantastic summer or winter, depending on where you are. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.